Okay, so this week so far, we have learned how to find the area of a parallelogram. So we learned the area for a parallelogram is area equals base times height. Right?
Yeah.
So for a parallelogram, left a L, there we go. We have area equals base times height. That's our formula we use. Okay, we also learned that within parallelograms we have squares, and the formula we use for the square is A equals S squared, where S means what? Side. Okay, so that's what we did earlier this week. Yesterday, not yesterday, the day before yesterday, we learned how to find the area of a triangle. So to get the area of a triangle, we said A equals half of base times height, because a triangle, if you had two congruent triangles and you shift them around, you can make a parallelogram with them. So that's why we say the triangle is half the base times height. So basically we take the parallelogram and half it. And today we're going to be finding the area of a trapezoid. And that area formula is area equals half base 1 plus base 2 times height. So let me kind of explain that to you before we actually start the lesson. So looking at your trapezoids, so we got two trapezoids here. They're congruent, same shape, same size, right? You can put them together and they're the same. So if I wanted to find the area of one, I could take another one and put it with it like this, and then what does that make?
Rectangle.
It makes, well, not a rectangle. Why is it a rectangle? It has four sides. It doesn't have the right angles. See the angles here? We've got acute angles and obtuse angles, right? Rectangles have to have 90-degree angles, so they have to have those right angles. And a lot of times you can tell, if you can make a square at the corners, you know it's a right angle. All right, so if I were to do this, if I were to take two of the same and put them together, I have a parallelogram. So I would do base times height to get my area here, right? So back to looking at our formula. So if I did that, I would have to take the base of this one plus the base of this one, multiply it times the height, and then do what? What does the half mean? I'm going to half it, right? So I would divide by 2 to break it in half. Does that make sense? Kind of? Okay, so we're obviously not going to always have manipulatives, right? So I'm going to show you what we're going to do in your notes. So let's look at your notes now. All right, so here's our notes. So in this lesson, we're finding the area of trapezoids, and we start out with our formula. Area equals half base 1 plus base 2. So instead of having to draw another trapezoid and rearrange this, we're just going to use the top as one base and the bottom as another base, because if I were to take two congruent trapezoids, I would have to turn this one over, right? Which means one of the bases would be what was on top here, and the other base would be this one. Does that make sense? Kind of. So to find the area, I'd say area equals half. And it really doesn't matter which one you put for base 1 or which one you put for base 2, but it's going to be those parallel lines. Okay, so your bases are always the parallel lines. That's important. So these are my parallel lines. So I have 1.6 plus 0.9. And then I'm going to multiply that times the height. So the next step would be to go ahead and do the parentheses first. So 1.6 plus 0.9 would give me what? 2.5. So now I'm going to go ahead and take the 2.5 and multiply times 0.6.
And you get 1.5.
Yeah, 1.5. So right here, area equals half of, I'm not giving myself a lot of room, half of, and remember right here that means you're multiplying. So we're saying half of 1.5. So how would we half 1.5? Just put in 1.5 and do what with it? Divide by 2. So divide by 2. And what do we get?
0.7.
Now, since this is area, that means I have to put meters squared. So there's our answer for example 1. Alright, so for example 2, again, my parallel lines are my bases. So base 1 and base 2, and it doesn't matter which order you put them in. So here I'm going to rewrite it. A equals half of base 1 plus base 2. Just make sure you're using those parallel lines for your bases, and your height is right here. If it doesn't have a dotted line, you know it's the height if it's the one that's not a parallel line. See how these two are not parallel lines? So that would be your height. Alright, so then I'm going to say half of, I'm going to do the parentheses first. So 4.6 plus 9.4 gives me 14. And this means times 4.5. Okay, so your next step, you could do this in any way you wanted because we're going straight across with multiplication. So you could say 14 times 4.5 and then divide by 2, or you could say half of 14 and then multiply times 4.5. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and half 14, which is 7. So I did that first, and then I'm going to multiply by 4.5. So 31.5, yes. So the area equals 31.5 centimeters squared. Okay, example 3, they give us the area is 702. So anytime they give you the A, make sure you write what it is under A. So they told us the area is 702, so we write it underneath the A. Then we're saying half of, here's our parallel lines right here, so half of 20 plus 34, and we're saying times H. We don't know what H is, so we're solving to figure out what the height is.
If you put the half right beside the parentheses, do you have to put the multiplication symbol?
No. No, because it's always implied. If it's right beside the H, it's implied. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Just like sometimes I'll do it over here and sometimes I won't. Alright, so parentheses first. And notice how I copy my formula each time. Make sure you're copying your formula each time. You're just taking one step at a time down. And I didn't have to put that, well. I went ahead and did 20 plus 34. So I did that in my head. Alright, so then we get down to the part where we have to half 54. So 54 divided by 2 is 27. Okay, so now I'm at the part where I have to solve for H. So to solve for H, I want H to be by itself. So how do I undo the multiplication? Divide by 27. These cancel out. 702 divided by 27 will give me 26, and that would be inches. And we do not square this because it's not area. Alright, so on number 1, page 389. This is page 389. So even though you've got this in your book, I still want you to write these examples step by step in your notebook. You don't have to draw them unless you just want to. If you want to, that's fine. If you don't want to, it's okay. You can look on 389. Now, so for example 1, we've got area equals half base 1 plus base 2 times height. So my bases I'm filling in here are 3 and 6, and they've already got the height there. So this one, just go ahead and fill in your book so you don't have to rewrite all that part, because you can look in your book for that. So then we're doing the 3 plus 6, which is 9. And then the reason they don't give you anything here is they let you kind of do it in whatever order you want. So I'm going to say 9 times 4 is 36, and half of 36 is 18. Any questions there? All right, look at number 2. Now this one I do want you to write down in your notebook. So notice this is one of those where we've got a straight height. So it's not dotted. So I know that my parallel lines are my bases, and this line that's straight that's across from the slant, that's my height. Alright, so now example 2, or number 2, not example 2. So notice this time they tell me that area is 45, so I'm putting 45 under A. Got that half again. And I'm going to add my bases. So I've got 8 and 10 in the middle, times the height, which I don't know. Make sure you're writing each step out. Don't do some of it in your head. Write it on paper. So then go ahead and bring down 45 and the 1/2, and let's do the parentheses part. So this would be 18. So then we're going to rewrite this again. Alright, so then half of 18 is 9. So here we have 45 equals 9 times h. So what would I do to each side to find h? Divide by 9, which means I get 5, I can cross that out, equals h, and that would be 5 feet. So make sure you've got all of that written down. Alright, number 3. So here we have our formula for the trapezoid. It shows us right here, these are our bases, those parallel lines. Here's our height. So we're trying to find the area. So we're going to rewrite A, because that's what we're trying to find. And we're going to fill in what we know. So we know the bases, and we know the height. So then I'm going to add what's in parentheses. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to half 60, which is 30. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is 30 times 18, which gives us what?
540 millimeters squared.
Exactly, 540 millimeters squared. If you will just go through the process, you should get the right answer every time. Okay, so here's number 4. Here's my formula again. I'm trying to find area, and I know that because I can see I've got my bases and my height. So area equals half. My bases are those parallel lines, and my height is this dotted line here. So first I'm going to do what's in parentheses. So 21 plus 17 is 38. I'm going to go ahead and half 38, which would be 19. And then I'll multiply it by 14. Which gives me 266 inches squared. Alright, you're going to go ahead and do 5 through 7. And we'll check those.
We're doing